Don't swear. Don't swear. Don't swear. And don't pick your nose. And if you say wood whale one more time, you're not getting any chocolate milk when we're done. You can do this. Today we're going to do a full restoration of a 1977 Wyco Big Top. No, we're not. Hello everybody. I'd like to welcome you to my lecture, my portion of this, and I wanted to, before we get started, say a couple of quick things. First, I wanted to say thank you to you for tuning in and for watching the mad ravings of a middle-aged lunatic about pinball. Is my first ever pinball lecture, God willing, not my last, and I hope that you'll be able to enjoy it. I also wanted to say thank you to you for supporting Expo. This has been an interesting year for everybody. We live in some very interesting times right now, and it's easy to tie yourself off from the world right now and not interact. And so I'm grateful to you for supporting Expo and supporting this ubiquitous staple of our hobby. And my thanks also go very much to the Expo and to Rob Berk for giving us this opportunity. It's so easy in this day and age to define yourself by things that you hate and things that make you angry. And I'm grateful to Rob Berk and the Expo for giving us this outlet to share our passion for pinball and to define ourselves by what we love. So I hope that you'll be able to enjoy my part of this as well as the entire Expo, and that you'll be able to withstand my rantings for a little while as we discuss a few things, and that you'll be able to get a few things out of this. And I know that there will be some people who will disagree with some of the things I say. And you know what? That's totally fine. I still respect you, and I hope that you'll show respect to others as well if you have differing methods and ideas on things. I have been very active online lately. I know quite a few of you from the EM Pinball Facebook group. And you know, we've had our arguments, we've had our disagreements, but the thing I love is that we've all been able to still say thank you and I respect you. And so that being said, I hope that we can all get together next year and that we can play some pinball and share in the lost art of the handshake, which is something I sorely miss. So let's get started. So we're coming to you right now from my office instead of my shop because my kids are playing around today, and so I'm filming here where it's a little bit quieter. We'll go to my shop a little bit later. But I wanted to begin with the question that I get asked probably more than any other, which is,
who are you and what are you doing here?
That's the one. I have been doing pinball since the 1st of January 2010 at 2:30 p.m. General Mountain Time. There is a story to that, but I'm not going to go into it. The critical time was a little while later after I got my second pinball machine. It was a 1969 Bally on-beam. Picture here. Yeah, that is the one. And I purchased it from a gentleman who, when I say it was under his roof, I don't mean it was indoors. A portion of the ceiling in his house had collapsed on this game a long time ago. And he had not really done much with it since then. Now, I, at that point, knew nothing about EM games. And this on-beam was a real treasure for me to find, and I really liked it. I wanted to make it good. So that is when I began to do some research, and I started to learn about the work of Clay Harrell, the Pin Repair Guides, Topcast, and the This Old Pinball videos, which any of you haven't seen, I recommend.
Peter, don't. They say if you watch that video, you die.
Ah, that's a lot of baloney.
I engrossed myself in these to try and start to learn this hobby. And so what I did was I tore the table apart. I decided to tear it apart, put it back together, clean everything, adjust everything as it needed to be. And it turned out, in my opinion, quite nicely. So I decided at that point when it was done, I traded it with a $100 bill to Dana Pettit, Mr. Pinball, for Williams' Time Fantasy. I was doing a bunch of tables, and near the end of that year, the 2011 price guide came out. And let me show you a picture. Yeah, that is a 1969 Bally on-beam. So I got a hold of Dana and I said, hey, is that my on-beam? And he said, no, it's mine. I bought it from you. Fair enough. And so that definitely was my table. And he said, yeah, it was absolutely beautiful condition. So I decided to put it on the cover. That was it. That was when I knew I wanted to do pinballs for as long as I could. And it's been a real journey since then. I've done a large number of tables since then. And I did a number in very quick succession. Williams Time Fantasy, Bally Electra, Williams Grand Lizard. I did a Cybernaut.
2 hours later.
Funhouse, Heavy Metal Meltdown, Flying Circus, Hotline, High Speed, Satin Dolls.
Much, much, much later.
So in short, badgers and possums just don't get on that well. But fast forward to about 5 months ago. I was, like I said, I'm very active on the EM Pinball Facebook group, and I posted something about wood rails, how much I loved them and how much I wanted to do more of them, because I'd done a handful, and they're probably my favorite thing to do. And a little while later, on a response on one of the posts, there was this lunatic pretending to be Rob Berk who messaged me and said, hey, I really like your style. Would you like to speak at Expo this year? So I did a little digging down the rabbit hole. I did some looking and found out it was actually, in fact, Rob Berk. So we talked and I said yes before he realized he had the wrong guy. And so here I am. So right now, why don't we cut to the studio? I'll show you where I work and some of the games that I have going on right now. All right, so welcome to the studio. This is my garage, and I call it my Mike's Classic Pinball Studio. Maybe that's just my ego. As you can see, it's not a big place. Here's my workbench over here. I built this myself actually to work on toy cars, but it's been taken over by the pinballs as well. Ooh, jelly beans. Sweet. Got my TV over there so I can watch James Bond while I work on games. And then let's see who is in residence at the asylum right now. Here we have a beautiful example of a 1958 Gottlieb rocket ship. This thing was not the best when it arrived, but looking much finer now. Check out that back glass. It's just a thing of beauty, isn't it? Playfield looking good, everything looking nice and sharp. Cards will be arriving tomorrow from my printer. This has to do with what I was talking about in other parts. I decided to leave those on. And we're going to have a discussion about wood rails later on, but what a beautiful machine. This thing is done. It is operational, except for lots missing here. So we're just wiring the coin or the button up in the front. But that's pretty well ready to go. 1960 Gottlieb Melody Lane. Absolutely beautiful machine. I love this thing. I love this kind of lockdown bar. It looks really good. This thing was absolute trash when it got here, but looking a lot better now. Look at that back glass. Is that not a thing of beauty? Looking really nice. And the only thing left with this one is the 30-volt hold relay coil has gone to meet its maker. So its replacement shall be arriving hopefully in the next day or two here. Then we have this. This thing is actually a real beauty of a machine, and I love it a lot. But This is a 1966 Chicago Coin Festival. This thing was absolute trash when it arrived, but as you can see, it's turned out pretty nice. I have a little bit of cleaning left to do on the cabinet. Let me show you a picture of the cabinet when it first got here. Yeah, that's some nasty stuff. That was tobacco. So we're just about there. Now, as far as mechanically, this machine, like I said, this one just needs the door wired. This one just needs a coil. This one needs an exorcist. I don't know what the hell's going on, but it's battling me on a day-by-day basis, so I will be returning to this later on this week. But so that's the studio. We're going to be spending a little bit more time here later in the lecture and talking about some other stuff. But for now, we'll get back to, more jelly beans. We're going to get back to more jelly beans. But for now, we'll get back to the other parts of the discussion, and we'll see you back here in a little while. So when we were putting together the list of things that I should discuss in my portion of this, the list grew really quickly, but we don't have time to do everything. But we wanted to talk about a few of the things that I have some maybe a little bit different views on, and some things that we had discussed. And one of those was why. Rob asked me at one point, why do you do this? Because I spend an excessive amount of time on games sometimes. I will do in excess of, on a really good game, I'll do maybe a dozen hours into a game, but I've been known to go upwards of 100 hours into a game.
Say what?
Now, if I'm billing at, let's say, $30 an hour, that's $3,000 in labor, in time, let alone parts. And so why, Mike, why would you do that? It goes on in my head. And my wife asked me the same question, but in a very different tone of voice that sometimes still haunts me. But I thought about it, and I was thinking particularly about some of the games I've been doing lately, which are very old wood rails, pre-1960s wood rails, and games even pre-war that I've worked on. And I thought about, let's take, for example, Rocket Ship, which you saw in a clip earlier. And I thought about, there were 800 of those made, 800. Not that big a run, really, but what an amazing game it was. So 800 games, and that was almost 70 years ago. So think about then, 70 years, what's happened to those games? How many are left? That's the big question. How many fell victim to lazy arcade operators or route people, or to bars, or to barns, or to restoration people years down the road who thought, there's a little bit of flaking in the back glass, or the score motor's acting a little wonky. I'm going to part it out. And we all know those guys. We know those people. I'm just going to part it out. Oh, it's not worth my time. Oh, there's some rat crap on there. I'm going to part it out. And don't choose to save the game. They're just, I'll part it out. I'll make a couple $100 on the back glass. And so now, let's say I have, for instance, that Rocket Ship. How many of those now do you think are left? 50? 20? By my research, I have been able to find 12. That's it. And I'm sure there's probably more, but known at this point, at least to me, is 12 out of 800. Now, are they going to make any more of these? No.
Oh no.
Not. So if I decide to part a game out, that's X minus 1. Eventually, X is going to equal 0. And the game is extinct. It's gone. And we won't see it again except for the odd virtual version of it or some pictures on ipdb.org. That's why I do it. That's why I'll go to such extensive lengths to save a game. Do you know what I'm saying?
saying.
Good morning, everybody. I'm on my way to work. I was looking through my notes on my way and found that I'd forgotten to talk about one section that I promised everybody that I would, and that's playfield plastics. What to do when your playfield plastics are not as wonderful as you'd like. Now, there's a lot of methods that people have for that. There's about as many different methods as there are opinions online. I'm a very cheap person, and I have my own methods that I'll do for myself or if I'm in a quick pinch. But there's a lot of methods that work really well. The best of those is obviously buying a new set of plastics or reproduction plastics. And now that our friends down under are starting to ship to the US again, that's a good thing for us, but it's still quite expensive for shipping. Plus, they're very, very backlogged right now, so it's going to take a long time before they're going to get to orders that were placed quite some time ago. But so, that's obviously the preferred method. Some of the methods I've tried that work really well, somebody recommended to me to use sticky decal print, where it's actually sticky on the front, and then you stick it up underneath some Lexan plastic, and that works beautifully. It looks really, really well, or it looks really good. In a pinch, you can just print it, and then you cut it down and cut out your piece of plastic. Use some 3M adhesive and just stick it underneath. That looks really, really good. It doesn't look perfect, but you've really got to go crazy on your Photoshop and on your Photoshop work and your color matching, or else it looks really off. I, however, am a very cheap son of a gun, and my preferred method is I happen to have a laminator with some really thick laminate. Now, that obviously is not thick enough to be a plastic by itself, but I'll show you in a clip right here what I do. But basically, what I do is I'll make the image in Photoshop, make sure it looks good, print it out a few times, get the colors to look right, and then I'll cut it all the way down to the image. Put it in a sheet of laminate, and nice thick laminate, like a 0.10. And then I take, if I'm lucky enough, like I've had in a couple of these, to have the old plastic, that it was just a nasty, nasty plastic. You don't want that kind of crap on your game. But so I would then trace around, and that way I can cut it out so it looks really nice. And then I will literally just put it slap bang right on top of the plastic. Now, this looks really nice. It's probably not a preferred method, and you probably would only want to do that in low impact areas where the plastic's on a low impact and not going to be taking a lot of hits, or else you're going to be replacing it soon enough. But if you're in a pinch like I've been in the past, then that's probably your best method for the cheap man's quick and dirty version of doing this. So give it a try. I hope that helps you out a little bit. Now let's head back to the office and have a quick discussion about the mechanics of your game, how to approach a method to repair your game without losing your mind and without losing your game. Okay, I've had some cheese. I'm ready to go. So what I want to talk about next is, it's for the new guys. This is for people just getting into the hobby. Those of you who have been doing this for 60 years, go get a slice of cake. You won't care about any of this. Are they gone? Okay. So I want to speak to some of you guys who are a little bit newer, because this is all stuff I've made a mistake on. So let's say the big day is here. You've decided it's time to approach a game. You're gonna do a game. Now, I've learned from experience, when you're gonna do a game, you need to ask yourself a a series of questions before you jump into this. And this can either be when you're just first deciding, when you are looking at a game, and even after you've bought one, but maybe ask yourself some of these before you do. And the funny thing is, your level of skill, I don't think is quite as important as some people say.
You're mad.
Yeah, because I think time breeds skill. And I think that time is the more important question. It's not, do I know what every single little switch does? God, no, you probably don't. No, you know what, neither do I. But do I have the time to figure it out? Yes, I do. So that's the big question. Do I have time to do this? The next one is my desire to do this. Is this something I really want to do, or am I just looking for something to put in the garage so my wife doesn't put a yoga studio in there?
Oh, snap.
Or something. And am I comfortable approaching this? Am I scared? Yeah, probably. I might screw up a game or something like that. Or, the first time you look inside a bingo machine, you think, oh my gosh, what is this? But am I ready to do this? So do I have the desire and the comfort level to do this? That's another big question. And the next big question is money. This is not cheap. It is expensive to repair some of these machines. Sometimes you get lucky, and all you need is some rubbers and a few bulbs. But in EM world, no. And in wood rail world, no, it's going to take more than that. So ask yourself those questions. Do I have the time? Do I have the desire? And do I have the money? Do I have the resources to do this? Now, if the answer to any of this is in the negative,
Don't try it.
or else you're going to walk into your garage or your basement or your whatever every day, and you're going to look over at that sad machine over in the corner, and you're going to think, and that's not where you want to be. You want to be excited to do this. So make sure that you're willing, you've got the time, you've got the resources to do it. Then this is going to be a good experience. So we've done that part. Now let's make a game plan. Now that's kind of a big discussion, is how we're going to move forward. How do we approach the game? So now that you've decided you want to do this, let's make a game plan. And the best part of having a plan to approach the repair of a machine, especially old wood rails, which are going to suck your time and money and your soul away from you, have a plan, have a method, have a step-by-step you're going to go through so that you can keep your way when you're doing these games, or else it's going to, like I said, it's going to sit in your garage and you're going to tinker and you're going to screw around with it, and you're going to wiggle this relay, oh, that didn't work. You're going to wiggle this relay, oh, that didn't work. Oh, maybe I should give it another thing of wax, this and this, this. And then you're going to get tempted to take shortcuts. There's a method I have seen floating around that angers up the blood. And again, here's the thing, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to digress. Maybe I'll edit this, maybe I won't, but some of you are going to disagree with what I say here. And the thing is, the game that you have in your mind right now that you're watching this for, it's your game. Do it how you want. This is not the Bible of how to do this. Do this how you want. But I speak from experience when I say that some of what I'm going to give you will work. And if this doesn't work, make something that's going to work for you. Give yourself some kind of plan and don't fall into traps. Now, one of the methods I have seen around lately is to take a bottle of brake cleaner or degreaser or some kind of caustic garbage, open up the game, spray the whole thing down until you can't breathe the air. And you take it outside. Grab your garden hose, spray the whole thing down, and then let it sit there for 3, 4, 5 days. Yeah. Now the problem with that method is it works. It works. Probably about 8 times out of 10, maybe 6 or 7, your game's going to fire and it's going to play. And that's the problem, because now you think you're okay. The problem is it's only going to work for now. Just for now. 6 weeks, 6 months, maybe if you're lucky, a year, your game's dead. It is bound for the scrap heap because, well, let's look real quick. First of all, Bakelite. A lot of these chemicals in Bakelite, which is what probably a ton of your machine is made of, don't get on well. Bakelite likes to shrink, it likes to decay, and pretty soon your switch stacks and all of your switches are out of alignment. Things are going to be rattly and not working too well. That's one problem of many. You've now soaked down your entire wiring harness. You've got high voltage electricity running through these wires that are wet. Well, I dried them. Yeah, you dried them, but it's a bit like a pile of clothes you leave out. The stuff on the outside is going to be dry. The stuff on the inside is still going to be wet. And you run the risk of shorting. A very small risk, but you run that risk. And then on top of that, what happens to a pile of clothes when the middle of it stays wet and you leave it be? All manner of nastiness and fungus and smells and rot come from it. And speaking of rot, water and wood, untreated wood, don't get on well. You're going to warp the wood. You're going to introduce fungus and bacteria. Your wood's going to rot. And eventually your game is just going to be a heap of garbage. So, and you know what? Again, there's some of you guys out there who are going to think, oh, well, that method works for me. Cool. That's cool. Go for it. If it works for you, go for it. It doesn't work for me. So, and that is kind of a big part of it. I respect these games a lot. And so I have methods that I use where I can be done in a handful of hours, because I have 3 different methods that I use for, or 3 different levels that I use for a game. Level 1 is, let's fix it. Just get it running. I can do that in a half a day if I'm really unlucky. I usually do it in a couple hours. Method 2 is, let's really go to town on this and let's make it nice. And that requires a lot more work. Level 3 is flat out museum level restoration. That's where you start getting into 100 hours worth of work and a lot of money. But yeah, a lot of times I'll just go with level 2 on a game. If it's for somebody else, I'll just do level 1, get it working. Then they can do the rest, and if they want me to do more, great. But so I have, and I was talking to Rob Berk about this, I have a checklist when I'm doing a game. And we were talking, I said, you know, it's about a 20-point checklist when I'm going through a game to get it working and to get it nice and to get it to where I want it to be. Oh, that's cool, yeah. And so I decided I'd go back through my notes and I check it. It's not 20. It's 120. This is the checklist. It is extensive, and there's a lot to it. We're not going to go over step by step of this in the video. Now, if any of you are interested in this, in getting this, email me, or I'll put a link somewhere. But email me, pinballgamer@gmail.com. I'll give you a copy. This works for me. Feel free to change it and do however you want. You know, make this work for you. But for me, this works. And so this is my plan. And so I want to go over briefly how I'll approach a game using this. Okay, everybody, welcome back to my workshop, my garage, but I'll call it a studio because I like the sound of that. But in the last section of Raving Lunacy, we talked a little bit about putting a game plan together. And what I wanted to do is I showed you guys my sheets, and these are available. Just let me know. I'm happy to send them to you. I don't want to go through everything in detail because this is going to be longer than the 10 Commandments at that point. So I wanted to do a really brief overview with you, though, and just kind of show you the mechanics. Now, I approach a game in two different sections. I do the mechanics, and then I will do I'll do the cosmetics afterward. Now, the cosmetics for me is a lot more fun, and I'll usually do it in that order. On occasion, it'll be the other way around with these gems behind me. I kind of did them both at the same time, which was a mistake. I should have done one or the other, but in preference, I will usually do the mechanics first and then the dessert, that is the cosmetics. So brief rundown of this. I'm just going to go through small sections, and then we're going to go around the workshop, and I'll show you mechanically what I'm talking about. Initial overview, for those of you who do end up getting this sheet, a lot of my games, when I get them, they come to me on trucks, so they'll come from out of state and sight unseen. So initially, I'm just going to look at the game and I'm going to say, oh, it all got here on time. It wasn't run over. It wasn't in some kind of horrific accident. So I'll check everything out, make sure it looks good. Then I'll go ahead and put the game together. I'll make sure everything's fitting good, make sure everything is there, leg bolts, head bolts, make sure I've got 4 legs of the same size. Larry, I'm talking to you. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding, Larry, I'm sorry. But, make sure that everything looks good. You've got everything there. Make sure there's nothing horrifically broken or wholesale missing. Now, at that point, we're all real tempted to do the same thing, and this is my first big tip. Turn the game on and let's see how it plays. No, don't turn your game on yet. I won't plug a game in. Now, unless I have played the game on location repeatedly, and usually only if it's a solid state, only then will I take it home, set it up, and play. Even in EM, if it played great there, EMs don't like to be moved. They're very temperamental. And wood rails especially, they really don't like to be moved. So I will bring the game back and I will go through most of this checklist. I won't plug the game in. Now, there's some reasons for that. First of all, you don't know what's happened in the move. You also don't know, let's say with me, I get game sight unseen in almost project state sometimes, and I have no idea what's going on in there. I don't know if, either Fido or Kitty passed away in the game, or a raccoon or something like that. So I'll usually do that in the overview. Who knows if the fuses have been replaced with anything from drill bits to 22 caliber bullets. Who knows? You don't want to run the risk. And a lot of times stuff's been jack-wired together, and then I've had a handful of games where it's completely jack-wired and everything's torn apart and rewired, and who knows what's going on. Or God forbid, the foil fuses. I almost swore, I didn't, but the foil fuses. So don't turn your game on yet, not until you've had a chance to really go through everything and make sure things look good. Big case in point is that machine in the middle back there, the Chicago Coin Festival. When I got it here, of course, I was same thing, tempted to turn the games on, see how they play, and see how much work I actually have ahead of me. I'm glad I didn't, because I opened the game and on the relay board was this, sitting on the relay board. Like that. Can you imagine what would happen if I turned that on? It would have been a lot more work for me. So don't turn your game on. The next thing you want to do when you've done all of that, and again, the methods, these are mine. If you want to change them, feel free. But this just seems like a logical order for me. Next thing you're going to want to do is pull the relay board out and get started on that, because there's a lot of work. Probably about, I'd say 60% of your mechanical work, 70% is going to be on that relay board. So let's cut over to that and I'll show you the next steps that I do. Okay, so welcome to the insanity that is a Chicago coin relay board. This thing's huge. This is like the size of one out of a Williams Grand Prix. So I wanted to kind of go over what I like to do here and some of the steps I like to take. Let's get rid of that. Yeah. So obviously the next thing I want to do once I pulled this relay board out is general assessment, make sure everything's there, not whole sections missing. And then I want to go through and clean it up. Now with this, I was really, really lucky on this game because all of the paper was intact, all the labels were intact, which is a huge bonus. Now, my tips, I do have a tip for doing this. One of these little guys right here, this is a stencil brush. It's very firm bristled, and you can buy these for $1 at your local dollar store, whichever flavor you have in your part of the country. Or craft stores have them where you're paying like $7 at that point for exactly the same thing. But so I like this thing because I can go through and I can dust really, really well, and I can run it over. Everything and make sure everything is looking a little bit better. Now, sometimes I'm going to want to take a brush of some kind that's a little firmer to get in there. I don't like to wet the whole board down. Sometimes I have resprayed a board. Let me show you a picture of one from the rocket ship here. I decided completely tearing down the inside of this thing. Yes, it looks really pretty, doesn't it? But I won't always go to those lengths. Plus, this thing's a demon. So that's the next thing I'll do. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll unscrew a section and I'll put it up on its side, clean everything, put it back down, do the next section, clean it, do the next section and clean it. But again, this thing's a beast. So I'll just go through, do the best I can on here until the client, whoever that may be, yells at me and says, "Why is it still dirty?" You should have seen it before. This game, when I open this game up, now I love the smell of EM games. I like that kind of combination of ozone and funk. It's drug to me. And I was a smoker for 22 years. I quit a little while ago, but I used to smoke for 22 years. Cigarette smoke doesn't bother me, but this game, oh my God, it's like Keith Richards died 3 times in the game. And it took a bit to get it out. For those of you who do want to get rid of that funk in a game and maybe get rid of some of the smell, like especially, God forbid, something died in there. This is just a little cap full of coffee grounds. Cheaper the better, because then it's nasty. But this is way better than the funky smell of tobacco death that was in the game. So this works beautifully. The game doesn't stink anymore, and it only took a few hours. So once I finish cleaning everything up and looking good, the next thing that I do is I'll go through and I'll ohm out the coils. Take my multimeter, set it to ohm, and get a reading on all of the coils. Now, get a schematic. Just do it. Steve Young's got every schematic you can imagine. Grab a schematic, and that way you know what coils are what, because when you get this far back, odds are the paper's not on there anymore. So go ahead and get a schematic, and it'll be a big help. Now, I do like this in that all of these, they say star target relay, K28 1200 coil. It says so right on the labels. Thank you, Chicago Coin. One of the things you really got right. Now, that's mean of me. I really like Chicago Coin games. Just this particular one has been a pain. But that's right. like I said, I love all games except for Cleopatra game. But so now I've done that. I've ohmed out my coils. Now the reason I'll do that is because sometimes, especially like on these, you can see there's no paper on any of these coils. And there are all kinds of different colors. We've got maroon, we've got red, we've got green. This would be a really pretty Christmas decoration, wouldn't it? But it's tough for me to tell if a coil is toasty. And sometimes it is tough to tell if a coil has shorted out, even if it looks nice. This one in particular, this thing actually looked great. It's completely shorted. But that was my fault. So, no, I'm not going to tell you why. But I do want to talk about these in a minute. So I've gone through, I've cleaned all that up. I've tested my coils. They're all good. Well, I haven't tested all of it. I haven't finished testing all of these yet, but they're all good. I had some other challenges with this one. But so your coils are good. I'm battling. Sorry, it's late and I'm tired. All of the lug portion of plastic where the lugs were on all of these had snapped off. I didn't feel like replacing, a couple of dozen coils at, 10, 12, 15 bucks a piece. So I actually just glued the plastic back on. And even though these coils heat up with the method that I used, which is not just super glue, but super glue and some baking soda on there, that stuff is better than epoxy to hold those together. I probably should have gone through, but I didn't want to wholesale replace coils. But now these are solid as a rock. So once that's done, your coils are good. Now what you want to do is check your switches. We'll get to this in a minute, but what I do is I'll go through my switches, and it's tough to see, but you'll get the idea. We go through and we look at switches and make sure everything's making good contact, or that it's the way it needs to be. I'm not going to show you close-ups of this. You guys know this. This is just a brief overview. So I'll go through and make sure these are all good. And then what I'll do is I'm going to clean every switch in the game. For those of you who don't know, these are Plastistone, Flexstone files. They're from Steve Young. They're brilliant. They are, they're just a file that flexes. So these are great. So just a quick example. What we'll do is take a small pair of pliers, get between your contact points, get some pressure on there, give it a quick, now I know that's good. And then I've checked, make sure there's good wiping action, that they're open and closed. Now, a lot of times when I'm doing this, what I'll do is I'll take some alligator clips onto my multimeter onto the ends, and I will actually hook up both ends of that particular switch. And then as I'm doing that, it'll be able to tone out. That can get excessive on a game like this, but believe it or not, it doesn't take that long. Like doing the ohms is going to take you about 5 minutes. Quick note on the ohms, ohm resistance. There are plenty of places out there that have tons and tons of charts for just about every kind of coil that's made, what the ohm resistance should be. So you've got a good reference. There's always going to be something out there, some kind of reference out there that'll be able to show you. So now I go through and I check all my lugs on all my wires. Now I know my switch stacks, or my switches are good over here. I know that everything's connected. Make sure that you don't have two that are too bent too close together on the lug ends, so that I've had it happen a lot. But so make sure that those are clear. So everything should look good at that point. Now, score motors. Yes, you have to check these. Go through and clean them. Now, these are a little bit more difficult. What you need to do is you need to go through, have a schematic, or if you don't have paperwork, a lot of these are available online, but a lot of schematics are available online, unless you're looking at Gottlieb or a lot earlier games, then you're not going to be so friggin' lucky. But so I had to order for all of these. Now, in the case of this particular game, there is no there's no chart on here for there's no chart on here for this, for the score motor. Luckily, it was in the side of the game. So that's just dumb luck. Usually your luck's going to be a little bit better than that. So you can then go through and check what is supposed to be open and closed, go through and clean them, make sure these are all adjusted properly. And when I'm doing a score motor, every time I will hook up each individual switch to my multimeter to tone and make sure it's making contact or not making contact, as the case may be. That can get confusing. I will do a whole video about that later, but sometimes on your score motor they'll test out or they won't test out properly, and that's because your hold relay is not on. So make sure when you're doing this, obviously don't have the damn thing plugged in, but make sure your hold relay is on, or the appropriate relay is on. That way you'll tone properly. With these bad boys, same thing. Undo them, lean them over, make sure all your switches look good. Stepper units, we could do a whole 20-hour video about stepper units. I'm not going to, but clean your stepper units as well. Go through, degum them. There's plenty of resources out there about how to do this. Again, I'm just doing an overview, but replace your cord. Replace your cord. This is one of the other reasons you don't want to turn the game on, is because God knows what's going on with this thing. You kill a rabbit. Sometimes a friend of mine that actually happened to, he plugged the game in, and there's a lot of breaks and stuff, and his rabbit went over and had a lick and gone. So replace your cord. Replacing the cord is really super simple. Yeah, let me show you quick. Okay, so I'm not. Always replace your cord. It's super simple too. Even on older cords, there's a side that's ribbed. That will be your white line on a new cord. So, and then the black goes on the other one. Now, if you are putting a 3-prong cord, which I recommend, the green ground will always come over to the transformer, and just hook it up to one of the, don't hook it up to a lug, but there's these 4 giant screws that hold down the transformer. Just hook it up to one of those. Just unscrew it a little bit, put it in there, tie it down. So that way you're grounded on that. Now you've got a new cord. Jones plugs. Quick little tip. Oftentimes I'll use sandpaper, but sometimes I will use a brush to go through these and get some of the stuff off. Now, when I'm doing that, my recommendation is a brass brush. Brass doesn't scratch metal as easy as a steel brush or something like that. Brass is much more gentle on the metal itself, so you're not taking metal away or scratching or potting your metal, but still getting all of the heaven knows what off of there. So I need to replace this one. It looks, I really need to stop brushing my teeth with these, but this one's nasty. So yeah. So get those clean, make sure those all look good. At that point, your relay board should be good to go. You've done all of that, and you're ready to go. So we go on to the next step at that point. Okay, so now after we've taken care of the relay board, let's go ahead and take care of inside of here. On this particular game, I got very lucky. I've got the score motor switch over here. I will usually take all the hardware out. We've got, on this particular game, we've got Jones plugs over here. We've got, you can't really see, so I'll just describe to you. We've got the tilt switch. We've got the knockers down there. We've got the chimes down there, or the bells down there. And I will take everything out. Don't wash your game. We talked about that before, but don't wash your game. This is a good time to check your assemblies too for your buttons. Check the switches for those. Make sure everything looks good. And then the best thing to do is just take a razor blade, scrape this out, and then sand it out. Then take a small brush and go ahead and just, you can buy these tiny little things that you brush everything out in a little piece of card as a dustbin, and then just get rid of everything. Keep an eye out for pieces though. So that's the next thing I'll do is I'll take care of the cabinet on the inside. Make sure it's nice and clean, make sure it's looking good.
Wow. Right? Great. Amazing.
Okay, so now that you've taken care of everything down inside the cabinet, welcome to Melody Lane. We're going to look underneath the playfield because now we're going to start focusing on the playfield. We're going to look underneath the playfield. We're going to go through everything and just make sure that, again, check every lug, make sure that everything is secure and solid. You see, I've got one up here that is not connected. I happen to know why, but I had some bad ones down here. A lot of this is jack wired again. I've actually tested this coil. It is good, so I'm leaving it in there. I tested the other coils already. Everything is good. This game actually does play. I've just got one minor problem with this thing up here that I'm taking care of, but this game actually does play, and it plays quite nicely. So just go through again. You've got relays down here, just like you did on a relay board. Go through, usually pull this playfield out, and if you are blessed enough to have a rotisserie, mount it up and do the same thing. Go through your switches, make sure that they are gapped properly, make sure that they are making good contact. I can see over here I've got one that most definitely does not. So make sure you've got that set. Go through and make sure you've got no breaks in the lines or anything. Make sure you've got nothing fried. Make sure you've got no major problems down here. So check everything there. Make sure everything is set up. Do your bulbs while you're down there. This is a good time to also level inserts. Didn't really need to do much of that on this game, but level your inserts while you've got everything pulled out. So now you've done the inside of the cabinet, you've done your coin door, made sure everything's good there. You've done that. The next thing is to work on the playfield itself. I'm not talking about touch-up yet. We'll get to that in a little bit, but there's a few things you're going to want to do on the top of the playfield. Okay, so playfield time. Isn't this thing a beauty? Such a pretty machine. Now, I've gone through and done pretty much everything on here, but when you're doing the upper part of the playfield, it's a good time to clean and wax. Take everything off. Give this thing a really good cleaning. It deserves it. It's earned it. So take everything off. Give it a really good cleaning. Clean around bumpers. Make sure your plastics look good. Make sure you're doing all your rubbers. As far as touch-ups, we'll talk about that in a bit, but again, make sure that switches are good, that you're looking and making sure all switches are making contact. Make sure you don't have any switches on your kickers or anything that are accidentally closed or bent. And go around and do that for everything. Make sure that you don't have any stuck wires, wire frames or wire rollovers. And you'll be able to see that when you're underneath the game as well. But just make sure everything looks good. Make sure it's polished up. And when you're waxing, be very careful. You can gum stuff up really quickly and really easily. So, just be careful with that. And give it a really good clean. As far as touching it up, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Hopefully your game doesn't need that because that's a whole new barrel of fun. But it's a good time to plug the game in when you're there. No, don't plug the game in yet. But when you get later, plug your game in. And then you can take your bulbs, or what I like to do. Okay, so we're going to redo that. It's also a good time to take bulbs out while you're cleaning and shopping it out. Take bulbs out. Take them to another machine, just in bulk. Turn your other game on. Look at one hole there. Just take one where you know it's the socket's working and it's lighting up, and just check every bulb. Or bulbs are $1.50 a box from Steve Young. Just buy 4 boxes. Costs you $6, and then you're covered. Then who knows? You're throwing away a lot of bulbs. And like I said, I'm cheap. So that's kind of the, when you're on top of the play field, just make sure everything's good. Check and make sure that nothing's horrifically wrong and that everything's operating properly.
Logical.
Okay, so we're over here on Melody Lane some more, and we're going to go to the back box. Now, back here is where another huge chunk of your work is going to come. I've done a good chunk of this already. I just have a little cleaning left to do. But back here is where, like I said, another large portion of your work is going to come in now. You got a number of stepper units back here of different functions, like you got the 0 to 9 unit. What you're going to want to do is make sure that, I always clean them anyway, but make sure that all of your, make sure that everything is operating freely and working well, and that your stepper units, this is a little bit laggy for my taste, but make sure everything's looking good, everything's operating properly. Again, check your switches, make sure that they're lined up properly, make sure they're making good contact, make sure that your coils aren't completely fried. That one actually, believe it or not, works, but that's getting replaced anyway because that sucks. We could do stacks of videos about cleaning score reels and making sure everything's adjusted properly. We're not going to. Just please make sure that you do this. Make sure they're operating freely and they're operating well. It's a little tough with these. They call them rat trap styles to go in and test for you and show you, but just take them apart. Do them anyway. They need to be cleaned anyway. So just go ahead and do them. Make sure your switches are adjusted properly. When I've been online, so many EM problems that people ask about could be dealt with by the switch being proper, the switches in your score motors being properly adjusted. So that's a really big thing. Make sure that you are taking care of that. So just make sure everything's good back here. Make sure that connection going on everything. Clean all your contacts. Clean your Jones plugs down here. Forgive me for saying it this way, but if you have time, polish your bell. Don't snicker. What I mean is take this thing off, give it a quick little dust and polish, and then secure it back on good and tight. It's going to sound better. So just make sure everything looks good back here. And once you're done with all of that, then you're kind of at a really good point there. So let's move on to that. Okay, so we've taken care of all of that. We've been through all of the game, got everything plugged back in, got the cord changed, made sure aliens haven't died in the game, and made sure that there's no lockdown bars laying on top of the relay board. Now that all of that's done, we can move on to the cosmetics, which is, in my opinion, the fun part. But now you've done all of that, you're ready to turn the game on. At least in my plan, you're ready to turn the game on and give it a try. Now, if you've taken the time and done everything, not skipped ahead, but you've actually done your due diligence and thought, oh, you know, the coils look all right. They should be fine. I'm not going to clean them. Probably 8 times out of 10, your game's now going to work on EMs. It's a miracle. If you just take the time and go through the plan, your game will probably work. But now is where we're going to go through and we're going to do operations on the game. You're going to go through and you're going to play this game over and over and over, and you're going to make sure that everything's working right. Play it with the glass off. Test all of the rollovers. Test every impact point. Make sure everything's scoring properly, but do it with a ball. Roll a ball over. Don't do it with your finger because it doesn't work the same. It doesn't have the same pressure as a ball hitting it, and you might get a false read on something. So do it with a ball and test your game. Now, if there are bugs, you can make note of them. Get yourself a nice big notepad, make notes of everything. I have pages for just about every game I've done. Then you can go back one at a time, look at your schematic, look at your notes, and you can go through and you can debug. Then you're ready to move on to the fun part, which for me is the cosmetics. Now, I'm not going to cover all of cosmetics of a game, but what I am going to do is there's a few things people wanted to talk about: how to preserve a back glass, how to do touch-ups, how to take care of wood rails, because that's really why I'm here, is for wood rail games. And that's what makes a wood rail is the freaking wood. So we're going to talk a little bit in a few minutes about how to take care of the wood and how to deal with situations with that. So what I'd like to bring you next is a clip from, 5-6 years ago. Some videos I did about EM gun game repair and restoration, and I filmed a whole big segment about how to take care of back glasses. And I don't feel like doing it again because I'm incredibly lazy, and I'm getting to be old. You can tell because I drink water out of jars. So now remember, this was 6 years and probably 30 pounds ago, so be nice.
Okay, so here we have the back glass out, and as you can see from the back, it does have some flaking. It's really not that bad compared to that damn thing, but it's really not too bad. But so here's what I'm going to do. Down in this area, of course, it's pretty skanky from sitting around for all of those years. I'm going to use a damp cloth to very carefully wash this area down here, and then I'm going to mask it off. And up in this area, what I'm going to do is I'm going to coat it with what's called Krylon Triple Thick Clear Glaze. Pinballers love this crap. And what it's going to do is it's going to protect the back of this, and it's going to make sure it doesn't flake anymore. And then I can determine touch-ups from there. But then you'll notice some of this is starting to lift and curl a little bit. Now, of course, when I spray that down, that's going to stay like that. But there's a trick to that. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take some Glad cling wrap, and I'm going to lay it over the top. I'm going to give this a really good wet spray of this. And then I'm going to lay it down over the top. I'm going to lay the Glad wrap over the top of this. And what it's going to do is it's going to help push down. Then I can push down on some of this and get it to lay down again and uncurl and stick itself to the glass. I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. Here's a neat little trick that I blatantly stole from Clay Harrell of pinrepair.com and the This Old Pinball videos. He's a genius, so I don't mind so much. What I've done is I've taken little sections of business card and then every penny that I own and cut out little squares and put some change on top of the little squares, and those are covering up the windows, because when I clear this thing, I don't want to get the crap on the windows, or I got to sit and scrape it off later, and then I run the risk of trying to scrape some paint. I really don't want to do that. So it's a neat little trick that you can use. Okay, so here I've given everything a really good wet coat of triple thick, and then I've laid a nice little layer, or a couple layers of Glad wrap over the top. Now the reason I sprayed it so wet is you'll see some of these areas now where it's been lifting. It's almost like it's been re-moisturized. So if I come in and I just push on it a little bit, what you see start to happen is that stuff will lay down and it will stick back to the glass. You can even adjust it a little bit if you need to. I wouldn't screw with it too much, but you can kind of go through and get some of those spots that are lifting up to lay back down. And that way, when this dries, it's going to be just awesome. No, it's not. It's still going to look like complete and utter crap, but this will be protected. Now, the critical thing, once you have done this, you must leave this for 24 hours. Do not get ambitious and try and pull it off before then. If you do, you are going to be hating your life, and you're going to be cursing your own name for days, because you're going to take paint with it. And then you may as well just pop the money to try and find and buy a new back glass at that point. Good luck with the game from this era. But so please remember, give it a nice wet, thick spray, and then cover it up and leave this. See, I'm filming this on a Saturday evening. I'm not doing squat Sunday, and I'm not going to come back here until Monday. At which point I will peel this off very slowly, and I'll be sure to film that so that you guys can see how to do it. You're going to pull it just from a corner, very carefully, slowly peel it back. And people say, my God, he's crazy. What is he doing? He's sticking stuff to the back of it. But if you let this stuff dry, and you let it dry for 24 hours, then it's at least 24 hours, then it will peel off very easily. Slowly, but easily. And you're not going to run the risk, really, of pulling more paint with you. If I do it now, I might... that'd be stupid. So that's how we take care of that.
24 hours later.
Okay, so we played a little pinball. That was fun. Had a good time. This is what we saw in the last one, and I have let this dry now for 24 hours. I want to show you kind of what has happened. Now, if you look at some of these sections down in here, you'll notice that they have laid down, and they're not curling up. So what I'm going to do, very gently from the side. God, I hope this works. You see it's dried, so the glad is not sticking to it. There we go. Paint safe, and as you can see, it didn't take any with it. No additional paint was lost. And this is actually now pretty dang solid. What I might do in a few here, so I'm probably going to put the things down and give it one more coat, just for giggles. And
better safe than sorry.
Exactly. And you can see from this side, don't drop it, Mike. It's really not so bad, you know. A lot of these sections laid down, so they're looking good now. And some of what's there, pretty basic color-wise. So I think this may be a good candidate for
That was going to
up.
be my question. Are you going to be able to find the right colors for this?
Yes. The nice thing is at my local craft store, all of the little, in fact, come with me real quick. I'll show you what we're going to do down the road. Come with me. I like not having to do this by myself. These bad boys. You see these. These are, at my local craft store, these are only about 60 cents a piece.
That's a money saver.
So, what we have to do, and I'll go into more detail when we get to touching it up, but I'll give you a 2-second rundown of what we're going to do. And this is something I do that's a little different. What I'll do is I'll paint color match on the front. I'll put a little bit of it on the front because I know that any color that I put on there, once it dries, is going to dry just a hair darker than when I put it on. So if I put it on the front, then I'm not ruining any color. And then what I can do is, if it's in a this is something I've kind of been testing and I've had good luck with. If it's a section where there's multiple colors there, what I can actually do is paint it from the front. And then when I lay it down, and I do it from the back,
You got
I
the
can
exact
see
color you need.
what color goes there.
Exactly color you need, and then go back into the front.
That's kind of what I'm going to be doing on this one too, and we'll get to this game later on down the road. There's a lot of sections here that are missing. So the same thing, if I paint it along the front, well, then when I pull the glass out, I can see from the back what color has to go where. Then I can go ahead and I can use the silver paint to kind of block out all of the areas that are going to be opaque. Colors where the light's going to be shining through, I don't have to deal with that. So I'm actually really pleased with how that turned out. Not
Yes,
quite
it
as
should be.
skanky. I've still got to polish it up a little down here, but I just use a little bit of Windex for that, so it's not near as skanky as it was and nasty.
Yeah, but you see with all the color on the front, you can tell if it's going to be the right color too or not,
Exactly.
and
If I
everything.
put color on the back and I
You
screw
ain't.
it up,
That's it.
that's
You're
it.
done.
I'm
So,
boned, and it looks like a 3-year-old did it for a kindergarten project. If I do it from the front, and that's how Clay and Norm teach it on the This Old Pinball videos.
Yep.
If I do it from the front, then I can see that it works. But if I do all the painting from the front, then I can
Get it
see
before.
how it's going to be on the back. Then I can just clean it off the front.
Clean it
with,
off and boom,
with a little
you're
bit
good.
of naphtha or something, like a little bit of alcohol, and just take it off. So
nice.
there we go.
Very nice.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that. God, that was a long time ago. I want to talk about touch-ups because that's one of the things I do a lot that not a lot of guys will do. Is playfield touch-ups. Now, back glass touch-ups, that's a whole other story. I do back glass touch-ups. Most recently, the big one I did, I decided to go crazy on a Williams Gulfstream. And the results are pretty good. Here's a before and here's an after. But that was a lot of work and worthy of a whole video that I'll put on my YouTube at some point by itself. Playfield touch-ups is a different matter. Now, unless you have, like we talked about earlier, unless you have a fair amount of desire and confidence with touch-ups, just don't bother. Leave it. Because sometimes you can do more harm than good if you kind of half-ass and go at it and just really do not that great a job. Then you're in some trouble. I like to do them. I'm married to a woman who's been an illustrator for 25 plus years. She really knows what she's doing, and she loves to yell at me all the time about how I'm doing it wrong. But again, a lot of people do, so we'll just go with what I do. Now, I have a rather extensive collection of these things. This is just the apple barrel matte acrylics. And the reason I like these is because they're a couple reasons. They're really good. There's a huge variety of colors. If you screw up, you can just take a damp rag and just wipe off what you did and then go back again. But what I like the best is you go to Walmart. These are 50 cents a bottle. You drop $40 and get their entire color range. Now, mine are a little bit different. Mine have numbers on them. There's Y3 for yellow number 3, Y5, Y4. Why, you ask? Funny. Is because, and this actually is attributed to some friends on the Ian Pinball Facebook group, of an idea that they had that I massively over-engineered to a new level. But that's all right. And that's these. Now, what I do here is I've just taken a half sheet of paper, stuck it in a full sheet of laminate, and now what I've got is this wonderful little tool. So what I can do is I can take my paintbrush, my palette, and then I can take all of my different yellows and I can stick them on there, as well as my pinks and whatever other colors I can see that I need. Then what I can do is I can actually, this is just a print, but what I can do is I can actually lay down and see, oh, that color works, that matches. And then I just wipe off the ones that I don't need. I just do it with a whiteboard marker. Mark them on there, just take off what you don't need, and then you can leave your notes in here in Sharpie about, oh, this is for Chicago Queen Festival. And that way you know what colors it is, and you know, then you can set them out, and you're ready to do your touch-ups. Like I said, touch-ups can be an interesting business. The Chicago Queen Festival, which I keep going back to, had, and I'll show you a picture right here, most of the lower area was missing, or it wasn't missing, somebody had just painted over it with white. So I was able to clean it off, and there was nothing there. Almost all of it was gone. So I was able to go through and look on IPDB and find what it was supposed to look like. And I used a kid's trick, because one of the problems that we were facing with this, now there's a lot of ways to do this, and a lot of people like to use the water decal method, the water slide, print them, water slide, especially text, print the water slide and then do that. That's a beautiful method. I love it. You have to coat it when you're done, as you do with almost all, pretty much all touch-ups. But it's sharp, it's clear, it's beautiful, but kind of takes some of it out for me. Plus, I don't have that nice a printer to do all of that. And I'm probably just too cheap. I mean, 50 cents. So here's what I did, because on the festival, there's this really weird font. And this is looking funny to me right now because I'm watching this in reverse and that looks normal, but see how it's backwards. This is what it looked like normally. It would look normal and forwards. I've printed this backwards. And what I've done is I've made this, took it into Photoshop and made it the correct size from one point to another point, which I measured on the playfield. And then I used an old kid's trick. And usually I'll do this with a pencil, but I'll show you. I will take in this weird font area, or say, some of where the stuff is missing down there. I'll take a pencil. I'm just doing this very sloppily on my reversed copy of this. So now I've got, a little bit of ink or graphite on there because I'm doing it in pencil. And now all of that was white because I went through, cleaned it up, touched it up, made it all white where I needed to put everything. Then I would cut it kind of where it needed to be so that I could center it, I could see through it, and I put it down. And then I took and I went over it with actually the backside of a big thick paintbrush on the back of it. And then what I ended up with on the paint, as you can kind of see here, I'm just on paper, there it was. Now, so now I had the size, the shape, and everything that I needed of where that strange, weird text needed to be. And this can work well for a graphic too if you have a little bit of artistic skill. I'm not saying I do, but I'm married to someone who does, so by osmosis, I'm just going to count it. So it's just an old kid's trick that I used to use for touch-ups, and so now I can go through and I can paint it, I can make it look good. Get yourself some good... pro tip here. Found some jelly beans. So pro tip. Couple of pro tips actually. Don't skimp on your materials. With paintbrushes. If you're going to invest in anything, if you're doing touch-ups, invest in good paintbrushes. Get some nice fine point ones. Now there are times where you're going to need to really get in there, and make it nice. I have a special thing I use for that. Now my wife's going to kill me when she sees this because she hates this. It's toothpick. This works beautifully because it's a very, very fine point. I just take the dab and do those tiniest little spots that I need to do. So that's kind of a couple other quick things too. If you're going to be doing the area around inserts, just another pro tip here. These are $10 on Amazon. Well worth every penny. Just get yourself a circle template. Provided everything's nice and even and you've done your job on the playfield. You lay it down, just take with your fine point brush and go around there. Now, it's obviously going to bleed to the inside, but then you put the slightly smaller circle over that once it's dried, and you take a Q-tip with a little bit of alcohol and go over the smaller circle. Then you've got a nice, clean circle. So, quick little tip there. So for touch-ups, once you're done, as far as coating it, there's a lot of schools of thought of that too. What I'll do, if it's tiny little touch-up somewhere that's kind of out of the way, I'm not going to bother. If it's a large area, if it's a small area in a heavy playfield, what I'll do is I'll take really fine liquid super glue and I'll just kind of put it into the area, and then some 2000 grit wet dry over top of it to even it out and give it a tiny bit of matte to match the rest of everything. And then it has some bite too, so that when you wax the playfield, it's going to look better. Now, once you are done, wax. I personally don't think you can wax too much. You can, but let me show you a couple of the things that I use. Just quick tip. Now, here's the one I don't like. That's mill wax. This is kind of a cleaner detergent wax. Now, I have it. I use it. Some people swear by this stuff. I'm on the fence about it. It does a good job. I'm not sure exactly what kind of nasties are in there, but God, it stinks. It smells like Brasso. Get a good hard carnauba wax. I love this stuff, the Carnauba Plus. It does have a couple of other interesting little things on it, but it's really nice, hard carnauba wax paste. And this does beautifully on a playfield. It smells a heck of a lot better than this crap does. But this gives it a really nice shine. Just put it in and then buff it out. And wait a half hour, do it again. Wait a half hour, do it again. A few coats really makes your playfield shine and play well and helps protect the areas that you've just been touching up. While I'm on this subject, let me talk real quick about one special thing that I learned, which was when you're cleaning your playfield. Now, this is a touchy subject. Cleaning playfields is a huge deal. For the longest time, I swore by the whole alcohol. Oh, speaking, that's good vodka. The whole isopropyl 90% alcohol and melamine foam. I steered away from that a little bit. I go back to it. It just depends on the situation. Novus 2, brilliant, great for cleaning a playfield. That's kind of my go-to. But I have a new go-to that I learned from Rob Berk. He was kind enough to share this with me. Go to the store or hop online and get yourself, but be very careful how you're doing this. Waterless hand cleaner. Not like hand sanitizer stuff, and you're just going back to alcohol, but waterless hand cleaner. It's got detergents and oils in it that will just cut right through the crap that's on a playfield, but not introduce too much moisture or water to a playfield. If you're using like mean green on a playfield or water or spick and span or some, then shame on you. Don't. So alcohol in a pinch, Novus 2 if you're doing it really well, Novus 2, but waterless hand cleaner, and just rub it in with a rag and then go through afterwards and rub it back out. It just takes the crap off of there and doesn't do anything negative to your playfield. So that's worth a try, but make sure that it is waterless hand cleaner. So Rob, thank you. You really changed the way I clean a playfield. I appreciate it. So what I want to do next real quick is I want to go over what kind of makes a wood rail, which is the wood. Let's talk about that for a minute. So now we've come to the heart of what makes a wood rail. I did it. I said wood rail. Wood rail. I don't get any chocolate milk now. Crap. This is why I love these, is because just the look of the game that when it's got the railing on there. There's just something about it. It doesn't look the same as with with metal rails and metal everything everywhere. There's just something beautiful about this. Now, taking care of wood rails, the wood on wood rails can be tough, but it can be pretty easy as well. If your game looks good, just make sure you're keeping it clean. Make sure you're keeping it waxed. But if you're doing a restoration like I'm often stuck into, this comes to you looking like garbage. These will look not great. I think we talked about on this particular game as well. If you look, here's another picture of it, just in case, of what a Melody Lane looked like when it came to me. Really not great. Like somebody had tried to be funny and rubbed turd all over the entire game. They did it in the ball trough too, which stained the wood. But as you can see, I've tried to clean it up the best I can. Now, let's kind of go through some of the thoughts on this. Now, when you got rough wood rails, I said it. What do? Do you sand? I mean, you can sand the living piss out of them, and then try and make them all perfect. Or sometimes, like in this case, I had some really deep grooves, a couple of cigarette burns that were just so deep they wouldn't come out, but it actually kind of added to the look of it once I had all of the brown crap stripped off. It looked kind of nice. I mean, I think that actually looks pretty sweet. It turned out nice. It didn't require a whole lot of sanding. Plus, I don't want to sand it too much because then you're just losing material. And I hate that. So sand everything down, make it look good. Now, you can take rails off of a game, but you don't always have to. If you're just careful, lay down some plastic, lay down some paper, and you don't necessarily have to take them off. But if they are just nailed in, you can just gently pry them out. And then you've got your rails out. So I will just use one of my hand sand. A lot of times, actually, I'll just use hand sandpaper and do this by hand. There's something about it that I love. And then make it look really nice, or to whatever level either you or your client want it to look. Some want it to look brand spanking new, like it just came off the factory floor. Some like a little bit of patina and a little bit of age to it. Most people will prefer that on a game. But now you've got this wood rail that you've absolutely sanded to death. What now? There's a lot of thoughts about that as well, because the way it was initially done in the manufacturers was a nitrocellulose lacquer was put on the bare wood. And over 60, 70 years, it would age and it would darken because these wood rails are commonly red oak. And so it kind of get a bit of a yellowish tint to it as it would age, a little bit of a yellow, a little bit of a red tint to it, and it would look really nice. But now you've just gotten rid of all that patina. What do? There's a lot of talk about aniline dye. I know some pinball people are very big into that. I've used the method before. I don't like aniline stuff because it's just, aniline itself is toxic. And with the dyes and stuff, getting the mixture right, going back and forth, and then, I make myself a little bit and it comes out just right. Oh, I didn't make myself quite enough. Or mixing it this way. Oh, now I've got way too much and it's wasted because it's wrong. And so it just got to be a hassle. I will still do it on really big projects. I'll commonly use 2 parts yellow to 1 part red, and then the tiniest bit of blue stuck in there just for good measure, or 3 parts yellow to 1 part red, and so on, to make it look really nice and give it kind of that patina that it needs. But you don't always have to go to that length. Stains. Yeah, I will use a stain on a wood rail at times. Sometimes I will. But if I'm really wanting it to look nice, you can get dozens and dozens and dozens of different colors of stain. So you can find one that's going to match what it looked like originally. So, leave one piece, leave one of the rails, and then work on the other rail until you can get that one to match what that one looked like. Then you can repeat the process on that rail, and that will look proper. Then what do you do after that? You need some kind of lacquer. They used to use lacquer on these rails so that they'd be protected, and that's what gave them their age. So you still need to protect them. You just don't want bare stained wood. But there is the magic golden product that we all use all the time anyway. And it's your good old Krylon triple thick. Give it a couple of quick spritzes, and then go back a minute later, or 10 minutes later, one more. Don't make it look like the top of, a bald man's head who waxes every day. It doesn't need to be glowing. It just needs to be protected and look nice, a little bit of a shine to it. And so if you just give it some light coats, you are going to get a little bit of a, feels like a little bit of a graininess to it, almost like a little bit of dust on it. fairly quickly after it started to dry. I don't sandpaper it because you potentially taking off a lot of your work. Literally just a piece of paper over the top of it. Just go back and forth with it a little bit, and that'll smooth it out. It works beautifully for me. So when I'm dealing with wood rails, that's kind of the biggest step. You want to preserve that wood. You want to make it look nice because it's like we've talked about before. You don't want these games to last 6 months. These games are 70 years old. Let's go for another 70. At least let's help these games get to 100 years old because they deserve it. These are fantastic pieces of our history, which is one of the reasons I'm so big on preserving these. So so that's kind of my notes on wood rail. Yeah, sweet. I actually made it through everything. So to wrap up, and I know I'm going to forget things, and I apologize. There's stuff I wanted to talk about, but my memory tends to fail me sometimes, and my notes get lost. And so, jelly beans. But so again, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you listening to my rants and my raves about this, and the prattlings of a middle-aged old man who likes to drink vodka. No, it's water, I promise. It's water out of a jar and work on pinball machines all day long. And thank you to Rob Berk for this opportunity, and thank you to everybody for supporting Rob and for supporting the Pinball Expo. I hope to see you all next year, unless we've gotten to the end of this lecture and everybody's like, what kind of madman is he? Bury him. Hopefully you've been able to get something out of this. I've had a lot of fun doing this, and I've had a lot of fun working on this batch of games, which is kind of my test bed for a lot of what we were going to talk about here. So now I can have them go away and we can do some new ones. So I'll keep an eye out on YouTube. I would appreciate it for some of my upcoming videos, but thank you again, everybody. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you watching, and be sure to keep your balls clean.